We're continuing our series here on Addiscene, introducing you to Village of Addison department heads. In our previous segment, we were out at the North Wastewater Treatment Plant with Rick Federici, hearing about the many capital projects happening in Public Works. Now we've come back to Village Hall, and we're going to look into an area very unique and very important because part of it has to do with when you're hired at the Village of Addison, how that process works. But we're also going to be talking about risk management. So it's going to be risk management and human resources as we introduce to you our HR and risk management director, Don Pinson. Don, thanks for coming and spending some time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
pleasure to be here.
It's interesting. You've been dealing with a problem that is worldwide in scope, and it's been going on for several months right now, and it's how does this impact the Village of Addison, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic, but more specifically how it impacts employees and day-to-day operations. So what are some of the things you've had to learn and become a pretty quick study about? You're a department of two, essentially, you have an assistant. So you've had to do a lot of work in a very short amount of time on this.
Correct. And back in March, when this really came to the forefront, we were forced to deal with something none of us really ever in my 25 years have had to deal with in dealing with keeping our employees safe. And it really caused us to have to alter our entire workflow physically and kind of mentally. We had to do so very quickly, and I was the point of contact for all of our departments with regards to every and any kind of COVID type of issue. We had to make quick adjustments, closing the Village Hall down. That was first and foremost. We closed the Village Hall down, and we structured and flowed, caused all the business to go into the police department, where employees of our community development, finance, and police department could operate behind a glass barrier, kind of reduce that face-to-face contact. We have implemented barriers in our community development department, for instance, information desk, and our finance department. Mm-hmm. The idea being to limit face-to-face contact, the aerosols, people breathing on each other. Right. And it's kind of a different way of doing things that employees are going to have to get used to. That face-to-face without a glass barrier.
We never had it in 20
Correct.
years.
Never had it. And that is here to stay because of COVID. We're still dealing with it now. I think the thing that really gives me great pride is our employees. We provide an essential service to our residents. We can't simply lock the doors and come back in June or July when this is all done. We had to continue to provide services. Police, Public Works, Community Development, all of us went in as first responders and continue to provide essential services to our residents. Mm-hmm. It brings me such great pride to know that our employees came in through all of this to give and to continue to give services to our residents. Some on the front lines, like police, Public Works, some behind the scenes, like dispatch, and you and I in our departments. It's been an extraordinary experience, and I can't thank our employees enough for their commitment to coming in despite very difficult situations.
So have you had to put any new policies in place with regard to any of your HR operations? Are there new things that are happening now that didn't happen 5 or 6 months ago?
We had employees on the point of contact. So if an employee has a runny nose or sore throat, or they live with a resident who may have tested positive or feels like they tested positive, on the point of contact. So we had to put in place kind of steps, a kind of how-to in each situation, what to do in each situation. In each situation, how do you try to capture that in a couple pages is almost impossible. But what to do in situations, how long one has to stay home, what is a fever, what isn't a fever, when are you getting tested, the point at where you start to develop symptoms is a good time to be tested. These are all things that we have to think about quickly. And we have to do, it's the old sanitation, wearing masks, clean your work desk, but also call me immediately if you're out there and a resident says, as a police officer says, hey, I've tested positive. You've got to act quickly to contain the situation, for the safety of everybody involved. Especially
and as hard as you try to put a policy in place, what happens if all of a sudden the conditions that people live in, that changes? Now your policies have to change as well.
Correct. And as you know, the CDC, we follow CDC guidelines, Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines, and we draft these policies. And as I always say, these policies, they will change. It's a living document, and it changes weekly. So we try to get that information out to our employees to keep them safe. That's all I care about, is that both our residents are served, but our employees are safe.
How would you define what risk management is then, given all the things that we just talked about with regard to COVID? One of the two areas that you're primarily responsible for is called risk management. They used to say, well, that was before something breaks. That's so you take care of things
React.
before it happens. You react. And it's really not that anymore because laws and policies, labor laws have changed. So, and we'll get into talk about some of that also. But with regard to the risk management side of your job, how has that changed in your 25 years of working at the Village of Addison?
Well, risk management is a huge topic. I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but in a simple sense, we have employees out there on the front lines who operate various types of equipment, and this equipment is potentially deadly and dangerous if not operated, and taken to task safely. So our goal is to manage that risk. I want to make sure that our residents who are served by our employees are served safely, and I want to make sure our employees are doing their job safely and they don't suffer any injuries. I also have to worry about first party and third party. Third party being the residents' property, businesses, and first party being village property. So we want to make sure that our staff are routinely trained and educated on how to operate any piece of equipment, how to even do their job, get into the minutia of how they do the job and how to avoid injuries that may occur or damage. So we have an extensive training program here in all departments. We devote a lot of resources to making sure that our employees are trained in every single thing they do. Accidents do happen, but we have a staff here who are trained ad nauseum in OSHA and Irma, our insurance pool.
We'll talk about that.
They come out, correct, we'll talk about that in a little bit. They come out and they provide training almost on a weekly basis. So I want to make sure our staff go out there, provide the service efficiently but safely for our residents.
You're operating a business, you're operating a public sector agency, you're also operating an industrial type of agency with public works, with environmental services, water pollution control, community development, even for that matter.
Correct.
Police.
Correct. There's a lot of liability there. So we cannot erase every single hazard or risk out there, but we do our best to make sure that we are eliminating that. But given a town of 30, almost 38,000, we really do have a lot of risk and sidewalks. Our biggest claim, right, is light pole knockdowns. Who would have thought?
Light poles.
In the village, light poles, trees, and fire hydrants. So we really do our best to try to mitigate risk, but given the diversity of liability we have, dispatch, police, wastewater, those are things that bring liability, but we're on top of it with our training and education.
Yeah. So let's talk about Irma. What is Irma? What does that stand for, and why is it such an important part of not only what you do, but an important part of the village, which ultimately means a lot to the taxpayers?
Correct. Irma, Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency, is a unique insurance pool. It's not your typical insurance broker, or insurance company. What it is a little over 70 towns. They pool their resources together. We contribute a certain amount of a premium every year based on our revenue and based on our loss, the past 5 years of loss history. So we contribute every year on an annualized basis into a pool, and we share risk. So these communities, from water protection districts to villages to library districts, we share the risk. So if one town has a large loss, well, we all kind of bear the cost.
In that?
Correct, financially. But the best part of Irma is we have a say in how claims are administered. It's much more intimate in the sense that I can call up a rep and we can talk about, every case is different. And we want to make sure that we consider everything before we honor or deny a claim. And we want to be fair and we want to be consistent. We have that ability. Insurance companies, the commercial insurance companies, it's cut or dry. They make the decisions. And it's not, and mostly the case with Irma, but we have more of a say. The best part for taxpayer dollars is if we have a good year with Irma and in our investments and our loss, we get a credit back, and that credit is used. It's kind of a return on our investment. Our premium
because you were safe,
correct?
Because you were operating safely.
Yes, and you won't have that with a commercial insurance.
Right, no, that's for sure.
That's profit for them.
Yeah,
for Irma, they refund it back to us, and we've had years and years of credit. So it's just an excellent organization.
So that's called an insurance pool?
Correct, insurance pool. They have them for healthcare. IPBC is a healthcare pool that some communities are a part of. So it's an idea of sharing risk and kind of keeping more of a say in how claims are administered.
Yeah, we won't even get into the talking about healthcare, but that is a whole area that Don has to deal with also, because when you've got
278 lives,
278 lives,
not including dependents.
Employees, dependents, retirees.
We're 400 with them.
And the Addison Public Library is part of
Correct.
that group also. That's a lot of people that you have to be concerned about.
Correct. Yeah, we've got 21 individual voluntary, well, most of them are voluntary programs, no cost to the village, the employee pays for, but we want to make sure that they have choice in their benefits. Wow. So with dependents, it's over 400 people that me and my faithful assistant, Kathy Ogashevitz, who I just couldn't do it without her.
Sure.
She is my rock, and without her, it would be overwhelming for 2 people.
Yeah, well, it is, I'm sure. I've
Yeah.
seen it. You said you've been here 25 years?
25 years.
This year?
Correct.
Very good. What is your educational background? Where did you go to school, and what did you study when you were in school?
My undergrad was at SIU Carbondale, Southern Illinois University. I got an undergraduate degree in political science. And then I transitioned immediately over to Northern Illinois University's program where you got your master's degree. I got my master's in public administration. Yeah. A very competitive school. It was one heck of an accomplishment. And I started here as an intern. In the village manager's office, and a couple years into my, while doing my master's and driving to Northern back and forth, working here 35 hours and then going to school at night, after 2.5 years I got my master's degree and eventually was promoted to administrative assistant and then to director of human resources and risk management.
I wouldn't be doing by the way, I'm a part-time instructor for Northern Illinois University in public administration, which is where Don is kind of leading, but I wouldn't be doing that part of my life a service if I didn't say, did the internship that you had while you were a student at Northern Illinois help you in your studies, and did your studies help you while you were doing your internship for the Village of Addison? In other words, did the internship play a big role while you were still in graduate school?
Huge role. There's nothing like real life experience. You classroom experience is invaluable, but there's nothing like being on the front lines. Not every internship is created equal. Some internships you're filing, you're making copies and shredding things. I was lucky to really hit the ground running. John Burley, who was the assistant village manager here, he gave me human resources and risk management right pretty much from the start after I'd been here a couple of years, and I really realized I didn't want to get into city management, but I wanted to be human resources and risk management. It's a very challenging, very difficult profession, but I love it, and I love working here. So the internship is invaluable because, as you know, you see those kids who are growing up that don't have that real world experience, and there's nothing like dealing with the real world.
Yeah,
in
that's
an
true.
internship.
Real world experiences makes you a better student. I will tell you it makes you a better teacher also.
Exactly.
And then you bring that back here.
Exactly.
Something else I know that you love, how many countries have you actually visited? Or maybe I should say, how many have you not visited? Because it's very safe to say you are truly a world traveler. There's roughly, people will argue how many real countries there are in the world. Some say 197, some say 193. I've been to 147 of them. 147 countries you have visited.
Correct. So in the last 15 years. So
can you name even a fraction of those?
Eswatini, Mauritania, Djibouti. These aren't jokes. These are real countries.
Wow.
So yes.
What led you to that?
My parents? I was very lucky. They would take me to the Caribbean and Mexico for trips in the summer. And I kind of about 15 years ago I went to Australia. And I was like, I thought that was the craziest trip ever. And then it went, okay, well, let's go to the Middle East. Let's go to Africa. And it really got into really kind of adventure travel. So I have a knack for going to really unorthodox, wonderful places, truly amazing, but off the beaten path. I like to pick places that some would say the Department of State website says don't travel to. I like to go to those places. And as a risk manager, one would scratch their head and say, I don't really understand that. Often I have to tell my parents that,
Didn't we just talk about this a minute ago about why risk management is so important?
So I've climbed active volcanoes and slept on rims of active volcanoes in the Congo, guerrilla treks in African countries, nuclear testing site of the Soviet Union in Kazakhstan, North Korea, Iran, Iraq, and met some extraordinary. It really breaks the preconceived notion people have of people in these countries, because they were nothing but welcoming, even as an American.
That's interesting.
There's ugliness in every country, but these people were wonderful to me personally. I don't know what other people's experiences were.
Out of 140, whatever it is, what was the best the best trip that you've taken into the best country?
It depends on what you're looking for in terms of animals, obviously.
Well, let's just say a vacation, for example.
I would say the most unique was North Korea. North Korea is actually quite easy to get to. I went with a tour group out of the UK. We have to be with them at all times.
But that's a dangerous place to go.
Dangerous only in the sense of being detained for nothing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. You do have a protocol. You have a 3-4 hour lecture in Beijing that you have to go through to make sure the do's and don'ts, because you could be arrested for anything there. Mm-hmm. I spent a week there with a group, and quite honestly, they deal with all the visa issues. Visas are the hardest things when you go to these countries, and they deal with the visa issues. It was truly a surreal, I can't say enough how surreal the experience was. It makes you feel how blessed you are to be in this country and to have the freedoms that we have, because unless you've been to some of these places, you just, wonderful people, but the freedoms just aren't there.
So if North Korea was the best place you went, which country would you say you didn't really care for? I guess you find the good in all. I think you've just explained why.
You do.
But are there any that you just say, that really, I didn't care for that trip, or it was a little too difficult for me to have to handle that?
You know what? I judge that on tourism, because I think tourism it makes things grittier. The people don't seem to be as genuine, when they see tourists and they kind of see you as a dollar sign. When you go to places that are off the beaten path, it's more ingenuous. They're more generous, they're more sincere, they're more curious. When you go to Africa, they're just not used to seeing tourists, and some of the most amazing people. But there are places. I did a tiger trek in India. The Indians are wonderful people. Some of the, they're very friendly and they're curious. But the tiger trek, they put you on this bus, a canter that's, I don't even know what they call it, but you have the open roof, and you go out looking for 30 tigers that exist in a massive part of central northern India and Rothenborg National Park. And kids are screaming, they're throwing things.
You or the tiger?
Yeah, well, both. I had been up for 30 hours just, to get there. I was tired. It was hot. We didn't see any tigers. I was there for 3 days. It was screaming kids. It was just not conducive to finding tigers who need peace and quiet. So that was probably one that I went to the Maldives and it rained the entire time.
Oh, what
so
a shame.
You fly that whole way. But I have to say, I am so fortunate to be able to do what I do.
And you go there with some knowledge of where you're going too. I mean, you want to be aware not only for your own safety, but also to appreciate the world that you've just entered, the country that you've entered, because some of these are third world countries.
Yes.
Many of them are.
They're developing countries that are rough. And I have guides. I've wired money to people in Africa and the Middle East, and you just hope they show up at the airport to pick you up. At 2 a.m, I've had some crazy experiences. I've stayed with witch doctors in Central Africa and Papua New Guinea, cannibals. No cannibals anymore, but ex-cannibals.
There are no cannibals?
Yeah,
really?
That's what they said. But I've been in some interesting situations, and I often have to tell my mom that I'm going to be going to Columbus, Ohio for the weekend for a retreat, and I'll be back in 3 days.
Boy.
Yeah, so
how about this?
God bless her.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, right. Let's get back to talk a little bit about the village of Addison. Human resources is the other part of your job. How has that changed in the 25 years? And I've kidded with you and Joe Moranowitz and other people. I remember when the village employment application was one side of one sheet of paper. You filled it out, you handed it in, and they considered you for your job, and it's not like that anymore.
Correct. Background check, what's that? So
when
I came here, like I said, when John Burley, a great guy, he said, hey, I want you to get some experience, so why don't you take on and help me with HR and risk management. Things were very decentralized. There were I wouldn't say departments operated on their own, but it was kind of, they were loose. There was no central really repository for HR and risk management functions. When I became director in 2000, I moved to make everything centralized, because what's important when you centralize things with risk management and HR is that you create consistency in the application of protocol, policies, procedures, which is essential. I want to make sure our employees and those who apply for jobs here, people who come in and visit and need services from my department are treated as fairly as possible. Every situation is different, but when you can have that central kind of filter, you make sure that you have consistency, which is just essential, because my goal is to make sure everybody's treated fairly.
Yeah, you have to have fairness in there.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
It's interesting because if you sit in through an interview process, there have to be questions that are predetermined ahead of time, so the applicant is able to answer questions, and they have to be the same set of questions for all applicants to make sure the process is fair. You have to if I've learned anything from Don, I've learned about documentation.
Documentation,
everything.
Yes.
Document everything.
Yes, Don, and documentation, and yes, the interview committee. We have a group of people, and it's amazing how we all collectively usually agree on a candidate that we want to proceed with. Background checks. People often worry about people out there doing public service. What kind of background check that they have? We have an extremely extensive background check. It takes usually a month to get through. Applicants are shocked that it's going to be a month, but that's one leg in the process, and it's extremely sensitive. These people are going out. They're dealing with the public. They're going into people's homes. Right. They have to be clear of any issues that would cause us any concern.
Do you ever lose applicants as a result of that?
Background checks, it happens. But
I mean, because of the length of time, for example.
No. A lot of people, believe it or not, no. I try to communicate with them along the way and tell them that you're halfway through. We've got a couple other people to talk to, and it's really not because it takes slow from our perspective. We reach out to a lot of agencies to find out about this person, not only just their employment, but also state police, the feds, and everything else, to make sure that there's no concerns. But no, we've not lost anybody.
How has the advertising of jobs changed over the years too? It's not just taking out a classified ad in the Daily Herald or the local newspaper anymore. How has that changed over the
Correct.
years?
It used to be Chicago Tribune, the Herald. We place an ad in the Addison Independent. And now, of course, with the Internet, I mean, it's a no-brainer that you would put things on Indeed or we've got Blue Line for our dispatcher positions for police. We have Indeed, Monster.com, great resources. We try to canvass really college campuses. We have resources that we will canvass. We try to cover every sector of our population to recruit from. We don't want to limit ourselves to any particular one sector for applicants. So everything now is a lot easier. I wouldn't say easier, but it's easier to get the word out than it would normally would. Facebook is a very popular site. Our website. I get a lot of people on our website. I always tell people, check the website here at the Village of Addison. I know I may be getting ahead of myself, but
no, you're fine.
We do place ads there in police department and the Village's Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook, and Twitter and Instagram. So,
and that's how it's changed.
Correct. Yes.
What's the one thing that people don't understand enough about the area that you work in, that if I could only get through to people and only tell them this is what it would be?
In terms of HR or
either.
Documentation. Trying to talk to employees and understand the importance of documentation. I hate to harp on discipline, but we want to make sure our employees are doing everything they have to do and should do here to serve our residents. And we have to make sure that we document our work. And sometimes when you're out, doing the job you're doing, you don't have time to sit and write something down and type up a dissertation. But it's critical to document, everything we do here.
And that can be interpreted what people characterize as whether or not they're documenting a lot. You don't have to go around and take photographs and interview witnesses or anything like that.
And it helps to the residents. It helps if we have to recreate a scenario with our residents. It helps to have that documentation. And it's I want to make sure that their story is told as well if need be.
Because it has a financial impact back to the residents, doesn't it?
Very much so.
With costs for things like risk management.
Very much so. So the more, everything we do affects the public. Yeah. And we have to make sure that what we do is adhering to the strictest of standards of safety. I want our employees to be safe, but I also want our residents to enjoy the services that they provide and to be safe in doing so.
Where's the next trip to?
Well, I had a trip planned. I was going to say I actually can't say because of security reasons, but
It's like interviewing somebody at the State Department.
Yes, pretty much. It was a couple places where they always tell you not to tell anyone you're going to. So obviously that was canceled with COVID. I got back from Mauritania in February, and little did I know that would probably be the last trip I would take for a while. Yeah. But I was supposed to go to East Timor. Is the one place I could tell you about. In May, and obviously that's been put on hold. So I think it's going to be a while before I I go anywhere. So I've been going to places I would have never thought I would go to.
Did you ever go to the Wisconsin Dells
yes,
or anything like
Lake,
that?
Lake Geneva.
Lake Geneva, there you go.
Starved Rock, Galena,
so nice.
which are great. They really are good places,
Sure.
especially Galena. But it's not...
Not East Timor.
yeah, it's not Cameroon or Gabon or anything like that.
How many passports have you gone through?
3 passports, and now they give you 52-page passports. So this is my second 52-page passport. So to actually go through a 52-page passport takes a lot of work, but
Yes.
but it's something I did, and it's kind of like.
Do you get an award from the State Department for most stamps? Or
They have a Century Club, which is you see 100 countries. It's a group you're part of. I'm not a part of that. There are the latest thing now with travelers is that you go to each country twice. So you've seen all 193, but then you go back and see 193 again. So having a full-time job, my trips are very short, believe it or not, 2-3 days on the ground, and then we're back. Sleep very little. I don't like taking 10-day trips because then you can't see what you can see because I only have so much time away.
Yeah.
So my trips are short, quick, kind of. Not every country is created equal. You don't need to spend 2 weeks in every country. It's just my opinion. So my trips are short, but always rewarding.
Very good.
I like to stay busy.
Don, thank you very much for spending the time with us to talk not only about the Human Resources and Risk Management Department at the Village of Addison and all that's involved in that, but also some very interesting stories about your world travels as well. A lot of things I'm just learning for the first time today. It's very fascinating. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me
visiting with us today. We'll be continuing on with our series talking with Village of Addison department heads. And when we're with you the next time, Mike Crandall from the Community Development Department will be with us. In fact, we'll be out on location at one of the big new housing development sites here in Addison to find out firsthand what's going on, and Mike will fill us in on that. I'm Don Weiss. Thank you for joining us.